We all know that there's a problem with the modern concept of dating. We just might not all know how to articulate it.
The fact of just like, you like, I don't know how to word this. Like in like talking stages, and it's just like you're like labeled that, and it's like people like are considered like, you can't like, you're just like confused, and like most of the time like the girl gets like attached or something, and they like see it like it's gonna lead to a relationship, and it's always not. And it's just like, that's like my biggest thing is like, I just hate the whole like how like talking stages are so like normalized. Like traditional dating does not exist in
Situationships, talking stages, even the modern concept of boyfriends and girlfriends are recent developments crafted in an attempt to help navigate people through the ever-changing dating scene. However, the problem is that it seems impossible to question these ideas or to offer another solution, as they are so ingrained in the consciousness of a generation. However, in true conservative fashion, I suggest that we look back at our history and our traditions to see what does and doesn't work. Now, doing this, we have to be careful to not chuck up all ideas that we initially disagree with as being barbaric. Nor can we blindly recreate all aspects of the past without taking into account the great work that has been done to move us forward. Instead, we must respect those who came before us and learn from their mistakes. With that being said, this is the first of a 4-part series in which we look back at the history of dating to see what aspects could be added or taken away from our modern dating culture, with the end goal of facilitating and sustaining healthy and fruitful marriages, which, by the way, should be the sole purpose of dating. As the author Donald Kingsbury said, tradition is a set of solutions for which we have forgotten the problems. Throw away the solutions and you get the problem back. One of the lessons that we can take away from the traditions and the mistakes of the past is how to balance duty and attraction in building and maintaining a relationship. Let me explain. Although it seems like a no-brainer now, the idea that someone should be initially attracted to the person they marry is actually a recent concept. For most of Western history, arranged marriages were the standard. Though this seems like primitive behavior now, it would serve us well to see what aspects from this form of courtship worked and why. So does arranged marriage work? Well, it's nothing I would be excited about. But under many measurements, it seems to be very successful. It's no coincidence that such a practice has been around for most of human history and is still the majority of marriages today. If arranged marriages were so bad, you'd think that after one generation, those who suffered the consequences of it would stop the act altogether. Yet, it prevailed. Often we forget that back then, parents also loved their kids too and would have taken their best interests into consideration.
When shall we make the wedding?
This is drastically different from today, where stories of love are depicted as even more romantic if the parents are actively against the marriage.
Not to see him anymore, and that's final.
Another way in which arranged marriages are successful is in the divorce rates. The divorce rate of an arranged marriage is as low as 6.3%, which looks even smaller compared to the 40 to 50% of U.S. marriages that end in a divorce, according to the American Psychological Association. So why is this the case? For arranged marriages, their focus is on duty. You get married because that's what you're supposed to do. And then you stay married because that's what you're supposed to do. And there is no excuses for not making it work. Now, I know that sticking through a marriage, for better and for worse, like you promised to do, will make a lot of people seethe. But that just proves that there is a lot that we can learn from this tradition. I'm not saying that romance shouldn't play a large part in the dating process, nor am I saying it shouldn't be something we should be actively trying to maintain in a relationship. But if we were to be honest with ourselves, we would come to the conclusion that the romance won't always be there. Marriage is not easy, and it's definitely not always roses, long walks on the beach, and dancing in the rain. Sometimes it's lies, betrayals, falling short of expectations, pride, and tragedy. It would be foolish to think that you can get through a marriage without receiving several heartbreaks, and even more foolish to think that you can get out of it alive. Likewise, the point of marriage, like the point of life, is simply not just to be happy. By all means, enjoy it as much as you can. However, if we set our purpose and our standard at happiness, we will not always be able to reach that goal. And there will be times in your marriage where you would just not be happy, and now you don't have happiness and you don't have a purpose. However, if we set our goal at something higher than happiness, then we'll have something able to get us through those hard times when they do come. Marriage is not the end goal, nor is it the happily ever after. It is simply a tool that allows you and somebody as useless and sinful as you to become a unit deserving of a happiness without end. And just like any goal worth achieving, it's going to be a lot of work. And sometimes it might even feel impossible. And when that happens and those romantic memories seem like echoes from a past life, we must remember the duty we have to the promises we made to God, our spouse, and our families at that altar. So is duty enough? No. You have the duty to get married, and you especially have the duty to stay that way. However, it should not be the why. Duty is simply the charge to do something. It is charity that supplies us the means and the purpose to do it. Often I have people tell me that love and duty are exclusive, that I should just have that warm, fuzzy feeling every time I help somebody. But that's just not always the case. Like any other action requiring faith, it is by exercising faith in a principle in which we see the fruits and therefore build a testimony of that principle. As we serve God's children in and outside of marriage, we then get to love them. We should not wait around for the feelings to just appear before doing an act of service. Christ himself is the perfect example of this principle. On the night of the Passover, Christ knelt down before his Father and in the most humble of prayers said, "Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done." Christ knew, if only in theory, what terrible and eternal pain he would have to suffer that night as he felt the afflictions, temptations, and the consequences of sin for all of God's children, so that he may satisfy justice and that he might be able to offer us a plan that would allow us to receive mercy so that we may live with him again. Greatest act of love in the whole universe. And you're going to tell me it doesn't mean anything because Christ wasn't thrilled about the idea, when in reality it shows how much love he did have for us, right? It's easy to do something that benefits you and somebody else. However, it takes the pure love of Christ to do something so great for someone as useless as you and as me. That's the kind of love that we need to have in our marriages, where we don't just love somebody and serve them because of the way it makes us feel, but because it's the right thing to do. For that reason, we need to pray for the gift of charity and to make it the glue of our relationships. Charity is described in the scriptures as being the pure love of Christ. In other words, it taps into the love that Christ had for you as he suffered through your exact problems. Instead of saying, I can or I can't, imagine what you're going through. You can receive the love of a God that has been through that exact trial himself and has appointed you to minister to that individual on his behalf. That is the type of love we must have in our marriages. The type of love that doesn't wait for warm, fuzzy feelings before acting. The love that acts on their duty knowing that they won't get anything out of it. And the love that fully deploys the pure love of Christ, no matter the consequences to oneself. Or as St. Thomas Aquinas put it, that love is the choice to will the good of the other. This love is what must be employed when there is nothing else holding your relationship together except for the promises that you made to each other and to God. It is the pure love of Christ alone that can allow you to fix those wounds and feel that romance again. So we've talked a lot about marriages, but what can the lessons we've learned of duty, like in arranged marriages, and charity, like the pure love of Christ, help us in finding a spouse? First off, listen to the counsels of your parents and family members, especially those in which whom's relationships you want to emulate. Not only do they have a lot more shared wisdom than you and an outside perspective, but often they have your best interest in mind when your suitors don't always. Second, don't worry too much if you don't feel an initial spark or if it's not always there. For often, that spark is us selfishly loving ourselves and the way somebody makes us feel, rather than getting our hands dirty to will the good of the other. Instead, serve each other in a way in which you won't feel guilty for the way they make you feel. Third, do not wait to practice charity only with someone that you are interested in dating. As you are charitable with all of God's children, you will be showing God that you are ready for the increased stewardship of marriage and of starting a family. And finally, when dating and marriage seems to wear you out, just be thankful that you don't have to marry somebody that you just met the same day.